Welcome to another team selection video ahead of Game Week 12. I will be analysing how I did in Game Week 11 and talking about my transfer plans. I've already made one transfer the other day and I also confirmed this in the reaction stream, but there might be one other move and I've got several options at my disposal. So be sure to give this video a like if you enjoy it. Let's get this to over 300 and we're also pushing forward towards 16,000 subscribers. We're literally only 100 or so away. So let's keep on going and thank you very much for all your support. And without further ado, let's get straight into this video. We're going to get onto my bench very shortly, but one of the things I didn't regret was starting Nick Pope, who got a clean sheet away to Man United, and to be fair, they were quite fortunate to do so. They probably should have conceded a penalty, and also, United had plenty of chances, such as Fred missing an open goal, and a few others that came their way. But there you go, Newcastle are quite a tough team to play against, they're very frustrating, and the likes of Nick Pope and Trippier offers such great value, and despite some recent problems from Nick Pope, not getting enough saves and bonus points, and also not enough points in general, I'm still quite happy to have him in the long term, although there might be a few others like Jose Sarr, Pickford, Gaeta, Raya and Sanchez who might offer better value for money. But at the moment, I'm happy to stick with Pope. I've got other fires to put out, and a 6-point away to United is still very impressive. I'm very happy with how my defensive line did this week, and that's clean sheets for 2 of my 3 defenders, and then when you factor in Nick Pope, that's 3 of the 4 in the defensive line. Cancelo was the only disappointment with a 2-pointer against Liverpool, and he tends to struggle at Anfield, and Salah gets the better of him, and it played a big part in the goal. Kilman got a clean sheet, although he was very lucky to get it. Jose Sarr bailed Wolves out of trouble by saving the penalty from Brennan Johnson, but I was expecting clean sheets for Spurs and Wolves, and that's why going into this week, I only made one transfer, and I brought in Doherty as my Reece James replacement, and things are looking a bit more positive with Doherty, and Conte was very happy with him after the game, and he talked about this being the Doherty of old, the one from last season, and he should be good to start against Man United. Famous last words, and if anything, Perisic could be the one missing out, and he obviously got the 8 points overall with a 2 bonus, but overall very happy with my defence. The problems start to creep in when we look at the midfield. Everyone, and I mean everyone in my midfield this week blanked except for one who is on my bench, and we'll get onto that very, very shortly. But the big problem was James Maddison picking up a yellow card with just 1 minute to go for simulation, trying to win his team a penalty, and he is now suspended because he has accumulated 5 yellow cards this season, so he will miss the game at home to Leeds, and now we have to find a replacement. And I think for most of us it'll be very easy to find one, but it's still a bit problematic because if you already have some of the key players I'm going to talk about, then it's kind of difficult to also have someone who has a good game in Game Week 12 and also good long-term fixtures that you can trust to come into that slot for Maddison, who was actually one of the best midfielders in the game in my opinion. Heung-min Son blanked against Everton, and once again it was Harry Kane getting all the limelight and the bonus points with that penalty he tucked away. Wilfried Zaha has been very frustrating, so despite his assist in Game Week 10, I'm very, very frustrated by what he's doing, and he's got the fixtures and I still back him to do well, but there are so many good midfielders in the game right now with Foden, De Bruyne, Saka, who I'm looking at after Game Week 12. And then you factor in a few others like Trossard and others that we're going to be talking about very soon. And I think our patience will wear thin with Wilfried Zaha at some point. Martinelli played well against Leeds, but I have to say Arsenal's general performance was very poor. They were lucky to get away with 3 points in that match, but Martinelli is still a long-term hold for me. If you have 6 Arsenal plus City players, that is a big problem going into Game Week 12 with the blank in mind. But I think Martinelli is one of the ones I'd like to keep, especially from the Arsenal ranks. He offers such great value, and I think there's a genuine debate now between Martinelli and Saka, who is the informed Arsenal attacker at the moment. But still, I like these midfielders in the long term, but there are some issues creeping in, such as the lack of form from Wilfried Zaha. Son isn't just offering enough points for someone of his value and his price, and then James Maddison is suspended. So I think in the long term, actually, there will be plenty of moves, despite the fact that all of these 4 midfielders are quality players. I took a risk by starting Mitrovic, who was an injury doubt heading into the game against Bournemouth, and I started him over Andreas Pereira, and I gained 2 points from that decision. Andreas got an assist, whilst Mitrovic tucked away a penalty in the second half, and he also got 1 bonus point, and at one stage he was on for 2. The big disappointment, and it won't be said many times this season, was Erling Haaland, who blanked yet again against Liverpool, just like he did in the Community Shield final, but not so many chances this time round, and Liverpool at Anfield is still a fortress, to be fair, and it's really difficult to beat them. It hasn't happened so far this year, and Van Dijk has never lost a Premier League game at Anfield. And then Ivan Toney was the big star for me, and he got my week off to a flying start. It's just a shame it didn't really continue after that. And on the Saturday, I was still doing pretty well, but The Sunday games is where everything kind of fell apart a little bit. I didn't have that many players and not many points from those I actually started. But in the end, a very good week overall. I'd say another green arrow. In terms of the points total, it's a bit underwhelming, so to speak. But it was a low scoring week and I didn't get such a poor score. And another green arrow. I'm happy with it. Hopefully more progress to come in the next few weeks. And the decisions I need to take will be very, very crucial. I'll talk about this very soon. But now let me show you my rank, who I captained, and a few other things before I move on to the Game Week 12 team selection. I did captain Haaland and I thought he would score against Liverpool, but there you go. You know, he's not going to score in every single game. He is human after all, which is quite surprising. But as you can see, I got 54 points and I've got 636 overall, and my rank went from 794,000 in the world to 612. So it's progress. It's nothing amazing or groundbreaking, but it's still a nice little green arrow. And around Game Week 9, I was at 1.2 million. So I've halved my rank since then. And if I can keep on chipping away, I can slowly but surely get into the places that I want to be. And also in terms of the captaincy going forward, I mean, Haaland is going to be my captain pretty much every single week. But there might be a debate to captain other players when he plays away from home. Most of his huge returns have come at the Etihad, and I'm not saying he can't score braces or hat-tricks away from home, because he definitely can, but it's maybe something to think about, and it finally opens up the captaincy debate, at least just a little bit, but he's still going to be the overwhelming favourite for most of these game weeks going forwards. I'm now going to talk about my Game Week 12 team selection, and I've already made one transfer, which I'll talk about, and I'll talk about the other possibilities for my second free transfer, all rolling, and what that could mean for Game Week 13 onwards. I started him every single week since I got him. Nick Pope will be starting over Ward, despite Leicester keeping clean sheets in the last 2 home games, and they've got another one coming up against Leeds. But I would favour Nick Pope and Newcastle's defence even more so, and Everton aren't exactly the most free-flowing team in the league. So Nick Pope is the standard choice. I've got other dilemmas going forward in other areas, but Nick Pope is not going to be an issue, and I have no problem starting him over Ward. It can backfire, but I'm happy to take the risk. I'm going with a back 4 this time. Doherty away to Man United isn't something that I'm full of confidence about, despite United struggling to score goals in the last 2 games in all competitions. I've also got Trippier at home to Everton, and to be honest, I've learned this the hard way, and before I forget, I benched 22 points in Game Week 11, and that was a huge frustration with that game week. But to be fair, who would I have benched really? Maddison and Zaha? I mean, looking at that game between Palace and Leicester, how many times will that end 0-0? Especially considering how poor both sides have been defensively this season, especially Leicester. But there you go. That's football. That's the beauty of it. And I benched 22 points with the likes of Ward with a clean sheet, Andres Pereira with an assist, Anderson with a yellow card but also a clean sheet, and the other one, Kieran Trippier, who, to be fair, I even said I have a good feeling about him potentially getting a return, but I wanted to start those in my starting 11 more so. I thought they had a high ceiling. Things turned out the way they did. But moving into Game Week 12 and focusing more on that and not too much about the bonus points and everything else I left out on my bench. Kilman away to Palace. I've got a little bit of a dilemma and a clash between Crystal Palace and Wolves, but I wouldn't be surprised if that game ended 0-0 and Wolves struggle to score goals. Palace as well haven't been that good going forward recently, and they're not getting the ball enough to Wilfried Zaha, who is the main difference maker and the one that can get those goals and assists for them. But I have to say, while I'm not the most optimistic in terms of my clean sheet chances across all of my defenders, Trippier has a good chance against Everton, and I wouldn't be that surprised, like I said, with a 0-0 or something like that between Palace and Wolves. It's mainly the Spurs defender there in Doherty, where I don't really expect an attack in return or a clean sheet, but you just never know what can happen in football, and it's still a decent defence considering the blank game week. I've only made one transfer so far, and that's Leandro Trossard in for James Maddison. It's a very easy switch for me. Trossard has an amazing fixture at home to Nottingham Forest. After that is Chelsea and Man City, but you can rotate him with Andres Pereira. So maybe going forwards, it would be Wilfried Zaha making way for the likes of Foden and Saka instead of Trossard. But I'll think about that more so when we get to that time frame. And also the other move I could make is Mohamed Salah in for Heung-min Son, who faces United away, of course. And Salah is arguably the best captaincy option this week. And honestly, I think those two, Salah and Trossard, are the top 2 options. Then you'd probably look at Harry Kane and Firmino as the top 4 options, so to speak, probably in that order. And Salah would be coming in as my captain, with Trossard potentially being my vice. But I have to say, I am tempted by the Trossard captaincy, as I talked about in the reaction stream. I'm not expecting great things from Zaha or Andres Pereira, but they still have the capabilities of producing some returns. It's not the best looking forward line with Haaland out, but Mitrovic and Toney should do the job. They are great value, and Toney is facing Chelsea, who are in great form at the moment. In the last 3 or 4 games in all competitions, they haven't conceded a goal, but they were very fortunate, and if it wasn't for a Kepa masterclass at Villa Park, they would have conceded, and I think Toney could cause them some big problems. And then Mitrovic at home to Villa, who have been decent defensively in recent games, with the exception of the Chelsea match. I still think Mitrovic can score some goals there, and I don't expect a huge ceiling from them and also the rest of my team, but it's still pretty solid with a whole bench really, apart from Ward, being Arsenal Man City players who blank. So it's still a pretty good team with 2 free transfers, and to be fair, even if I decide to roll the other one, I would have Heung-min Son instead of Salah, and that would maybe change the captaincy outlook for me and settle the decision, but it still would be pretty good in my opinion. So as I kind of spoiled earlier in the video, if I decide to go with Salah as well as my second transfer, he would be my captain and Trossard would be the vice. However, if I decide to roll the transfer, and I'll talk about why I might do that in the end, I would actually captain Leandro Trossard, I believe, with Heung-min Son being my vice. I just don't really see anyone else apart from maybe Trippier as a consistent, reliable player who also has a high ceiling. And even despite how good Trippier has been, no double-digit returns for him so far this season. And maybe I've jinxed it and now he'll get one. I wouldn't mind that at all. In terms of the bench, it would be Ward in goal with Cancelo, Martinelli and Haaland, who all blank. So really the only benching headache for me this week is Ward versus Pope. So no 22 points on my bench this time round, thank God, because that was very frustrating. Now I'm going to show you some other different transfer plans of what I could do, and also talk about why rolling the transfer in my situation, rolling the second transfer, could be very beneficial for my team going forwards. Instead of doing Heung-min Son to Salah, I could do Doherty to Dunk, which is something I talked about going into this game week. So kind of switching between these defenders, and then ultimately I could get Ben White, Saliba or another Arsenal defender in place of Lewis Dunk. But to be fair, I'm not a big fan of that idea. I would rather have some stability at the back and focus my transfers in the midfield and the attack, and that's what I think I will do. But this is another possibility. It wouldn't impact the bench. It would certainly impact the captaincy decision though, as Trossard would probably be the standout in my opinion, but it's kind of an interesting one. I'm still open to the idea, but I have to say as the week goes on, it's less likely, and I think Salah coming in for Son or rolling my transfer are the most likely scenarios. I would highly recommend using websites such as FPL.team, which is on screen, because you can visualize your team for future match weeks, which you can't do in the FPL website. So if I decide to roll my second transfer and I don't get rid of Son or Doherty, then in Game Week 13, I could perhaps get an Arsenal defender like Ben White in for Doherty, for example, or maybe someone else. But more importantly, it would give me 2 free transfers going into Game Week 13, and I can start to bring in more Arsenal and City players, which is what I want to do long term. And if you look at the fixtures between 13 and 16, Arsenal and City have a good chance of scoring multiple goals, getting some clean sheets, and plenty of points in the Premier League table. And Phil Foden and Saka, in my opinion, are the 2 best midfielders at the moment. They are looking like great value. Foden was very unlucky to have his goal disallowed at Anfield, and Saka scored a really well taken goal from a tight angle against Leeds, and he has been one of the most informed players in the month of October, and he also has been doing well since Game Week 4, quietly going under the radar. So these two could come in for Trossard and also Wilfried Zaha, so I could keep Heung-min Son as my second premium, so to speak, and I can also have enough money to get Foden and Saka, and I'd still have 1.1 million in the bank. So remember, what you see here is if I roll my second transfer, decide not to get Salah in and captain him in Game Week 12, or go for kind of something maybe woke, you could say, and get in Dunk in for Doherty, and I would be able to have 2 free transfers in Game Week 13. And I think long term, I might benefit more from making these moves, because I have to be honest, I would love to have both Foden and Saka. And whilst I can do that, on top of getting Salah, that would incur a -4 hit if I decide to go around that route and mix both avenues together. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Would you roll the transfer? Would you bring Salah in Game Week 12? Or would you get Dunk in? Let me know your thoughts. I also put a poll out on my channel, and Salah in for Son is the winner at the moment, but it's quite close between that and getting Foden and Saka in. So be sure to let me know your thoughts, and thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 300 likes, and let's also push on towards 16,000 subscribers. We're almost there, and thank you very much for all your support. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and also check the links in the description below, including the Patreon, the channel memberships, the FPL League, and also the Discord server. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 12 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.